In 1917, two revolutions took place in the Russian Empire, as a result of which the country fell apart. It became a chance for many enslaved nations to gain independence. Ukrainians were one of these nations. They formed their own state, but the new government in the Kremlin wanted to return Ukrainian grain and coal under its control. At the cost of 3 years and tens of thousands of losses, they succeeded. At that time, there was a serious economic and humanitarian crisis in the USSR. For example, the American dollar was then worth 2,300,000 rubles, and by 1923, 7 million people had died from post-war hunger and disease. In order to stabilize the economy, the Soviet Union introduced so-called collective farms, where people grew wheat and grain from morning to night, absolutely without salary or even passports. They worked exclusively for food. However, an international economic crisis, known to us as the Great Depression, came, as a result of which the prices of agricultural products fell greatly. So the Soviet government increased plans for grain procurement in Ukraine, but it was almost impossible to fulfill such large volumes. For the sake of awards from the Communist Party and an additional 100 rubles in the pockets of the management of collective farms, they even stopped giving bread to employees, that is. Now thousands of people, who have been working for several days without a break, are working for nothing. Ukrainian peasants, who are starting to go out en masse for protests, don't like this very much. As of 1930, 1,000 peasant rallies took place in Ukraine, of which up to 50 qualified as armed uprisings. But the chairman of the Soviet Union with the short title of General Secretary of the Central Secretariat of the Communist Party of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Joseph Jugashvili, or as we know him today, Stalin, did not like it. In addition, collective farm workers often have to steal bread, flour, and even dough from the warehouses of collective farms. But this was not enough for Stalin. In August 1932, he created the 5 Years Law, which stated that even if a collective farmer stole more than 5 ears of wheat, he faced 10 years in prison or being shot on the spot by armed guards. Stalin also sent hundreds of thousands of soldiers to Ukraine to take all the food from the peasants, to deliver it to the collective farms, and to send it abroad. And to spend the money on building new heavy industry factories and equipping these soldiers. Under such conditions, in order to survive, the peasants had to pluck grass from the ground just to survive. Residents of villages began to leave en masse for large cities, which caused serious overpopulation of Kharkiv, Kyiv, and other cities. Later, the NKVD will strengthen the security of the railway stations, and people from the outside, when they try to contact the literally surrounded villagers, were turned away by soldiers and policemen. The situation was not so dire until winter came and there was almost nothing to eat. The peasants ate animals or viburnum to survive. And those rebelling peasants who still survived were finished off by the Soviet troops, sent by order of the Second Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, Pavel Postyshev. By the end of the winter of 1933, 25,000 people were dying every day. These statistics continued until the summer of that year, when the authorities began to return food to the peasants. But the famine still continued until the last Saturday of November 1933. During this artificial famine, 5 to 10 million Ukrainians died, more than 20 million miraculously managed to survive. The same events took place in the North Caucasus inhabited by Ukrainians and Kazakhstan, but the most deaths occurred in Ukraine. Every year, on the last Saturday of November, Ukrainians commemorate their deceased grandparents. Almost 30 countries of the world recognize the Holodomor as a genocide of Ukrainians. But Muscovites, or Russians, continue to spread fakes on this topic, saying like the Holodomor was caused by a bad harvest, despite the fact that the harvest was good then. Be that as it may, but we should never forget what will happen if Ukraine is occupied by Moscovia, and not believe their fakes. Be that as it may, one of the reasons for the famine was the peasant protests, which also occurred due to the reluctance of the peasants to join the collective farms and the Soviet management system itself. Despite the fact that the Ukrainians stopped rebelling against the Soviet Union, they only began to hate the Soviet government and the Union more. In general, the Soviet government could not achieve its goals. If the Ukrainians resisted when they had neither a state, nor defense, nor support from other countries, now we are also resisting. Like this video, subscribe to the channel and share this video. Glory to Ukraine!